PowerOversight.org, the nonprofit group representing the IRS whistleblower Gary Shapley, joins us now. First up, I just want to get this in here. It is the first tweet that I have seen from the POTUS account. Yep. Okay. So they're still just referencing Kamala Harris. It was 3 years since they announced Kamala Harris. He announced Kamala Harris as his running mate. So we're still waiting White House reaction. First, jump into the breaking news here on David Weiss being named the special counsel under the Hunter Biden probe. And the timing of all of it is what we're zeroing in on right now. What can you add to this?
Well, according to the Attorney General, the U.S. Attorney in Delaware, Mr. Weiss, asked for special counsel authority just this Tuesday and was granted it, which is odd because both Mr. Weiss and Mr. Garland have been saying for a long time that he didn't need special counsel authority. So it's kind of an odd choice to pick this person who was leading the office during a time when the IRS whistleblowers brought forward all kinds of concerns about the way that the probe was handled and the lack of independence and the special preferential treatment given to the president's son, to choose that very same person to go ahead and elevate them to special counsel status when he has been claiming to Congress all along that he didn't need it seems like an odd choice. And I don't know what is driving the timing, other than, I guess, perhaps that they weren't able to come to any kind of a renegotiated plea deal with the subject.
Because obviously that's a big part of what we're learning now. Just want to get this in here because Garrett Ventry is going to be joining us coming up. He says they waited over 2 years to appoint a special counsel, conveniently after the statute of limitations passed on some of Hunter's crimes. Career IRS whistleblowers have alleged that Biden's DOJ has stifled and slowed down investigations into Hunter Biden. Complete BS. Your reaction to that?
Well, it would have made a lot more sense if they had chosen somebody from outside government who would have, the full confidence of the public across the political spectrum, that they were going to take a true independent look at this and not allow any political considerations or input from political appointees. Mr. Weiss, one of the key allegations of the IRS whistleblowers we represent is that Mr. Weiss allowed political appointees in California and D.C. to weigh in on whether or not charges would be brought at the same time that the Attorney General was telling the public and telling Congress that there would be no political role. There would be no role for political appointees, and that's why everyone could trust Mr. Weiss. So given that history, it's an odd choice for someone to go forward and do this in a way that's going to have any public confidence.
Very interesting. That public confidence is really important. This was a different moment in the past hour as the news was breaking. Chuck Grassley was speaking live at the Iowa State Fair, reacting to the news as it was happening. Listen.
We sent a letter. I was one of those that sent a letter saying we should have a special counsel. So the short answer to your question is it's about time. On the other hand, I have some question about Weiss doing it. They never did anything with the 1023 document that I got released. So you just wonder how thorough Weiss is doing it. Since this administration has exemplified so much political bias in the FBI and the Department of Justice, I think there's reasons to raise questions. You can't do one thing for a Democrat and another thing for a Republican because the Constitution requires equal justice.
Jason, that seemed to speak directly to the point that you just made. I also want to get your reaction to this. This was Peter Doocy, our own Peter Doocy, and he was snapped at by the president for asking what President Biden called a lousy question about Hunter Biden and his former business partner, Devon Archer. Listen.
There's this testimony now where one of your son's former business associates is claiming that you were on speakerphone a lot with them talking business. Is that what?
Never talk business in anyone. And I knew you'd have a lousy question.
Well, why is that a lousy question?
Because it's not true.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Because it's not true, Jason. It was a perfectly fine question, and the president answered with that. What did you think when you heard that?
Well, I mean, I just thinking about the testimony of our client Gary Shapley and all the situations during the investigation in which they weren't allowed to probe into anything that would go to that might go to the president or Joe Biden. They had roadblocks left and right And so, if we wanted to find out what the truth was, we would not put roadblocks in the way of career criminal investigators who were trying to do their job.
I mean, when you look at the timing of all of this, and here we go, we are full speed into the presidential election. The first debate is coming up. There's a lot of talk over the implications, the political implications for the president and his re-election bid. All this is coming together pretty quickly here. And the DOJ was just asked whether or not this involves the president, this investigation, whether or not he's under investigation. They declined to comment, Jason.
Well, I mean, this is why you need an independent counsel who has some actual confidence from the public that they can do the job independently. And I don't think that, given Mr. Weiss's role in leading the investigation during the time that, you had whistleblowers come out and say that it was, 5 years worth of preferential treatment for the president's son, that's not the person that I would have chosen, obviously. Because if your goal is to reassure people that it's being handled independently and fairly and without any political considerations, that's not that's not the person you would normally choose. I've heard some people saying that this is somehow elevating him to special counsel now, even though they've previously said he didn't need to be, is somehow a way to insulate them from congressional inquiry. And I would just, note for people that, there is no immunity for special counsels from congressional subpoenas. And so folks on Capitol Hill, shouldn't be taking that, it may be something that they can say in the PR battle. But in terms of, legally preventing him from being able to testify before Congress, just his special counsel status does not do that. It's not a force field against congressional oversight. If I were still on Capitol Hill, what I would be saying is, okay, August 11th, that everything after that, fine. We won't look at what's ongoing, what he's looking into, as of now going forward. But all of the controversies before that, when he and the attorney general didn't seem to be on the same page about what authorities he had, and the evidence from the whistleblowers and the documents that they have contradicts what authority he had, all of that should still be fair game for congressional oversight.
Speaking of reaction and speaking of building up to 2024, here was GOP presidential candidate Nikki Haley. She joined us last hour and said this. Listen.
I don't hear anything about, the Hunter Biden cases or the Trump cases. I do hear a lot about the distrust in federal government, the distrust in our intelligence agencies, the distrust in the Department of Justice, and the fact that the federal government's just way too big.
She went on to say the American people see this, and she says something, you know that just something smells bad about everything that we are seeing and hearing. And obviously, Jason, you have a very unique perspective through your clients, the whistleblowers themselves. What do you say to the American people who are feeling and thinking that right now?
Well, I think you're perfectly justified to think and feel that. I mean, based on what we know from the public record, you have a 5-year meandering investigation that almost ended in, what most people criticized as a sweetheart plea deal, which the judge said, ultimately had this immunity provision in something that she didn't have control over. And so she wasn't willing to sign off on it. And the whole thing fell apart. So, the basic facts just don't give you a lot of room to, to trust that everything's being handled above board and by the book.
And some other reaction we got in the last few minutes here, Senator Lindsey Graham on Democrats making a mess of this Hunter Biden case. He says this.
This was a political decision, not a legal decision. They're trying to put out a fire, and they just poured gasoline on it. Nobody in their right mind believes that making him a special counsel, Mr. Weiss, cleans up the mess that's been created.
I'll get your final reaction to that, Jason.
Well, I mean, absolutely. I agree. I mean, that's why you needed to have, once the whistleblower's testimony came forward and was released to the public, at that point, I don't see any way that Mr. Weiss could continue to oversee this investigation in a way that would give anybody confidence in the outcome. But that's what we have. I think it's up to Congress now to make sure that there's as much transparency and light of day on the process as possible going forward.
Surely they're going to want to know what those whistleblowers had to say, the special counsel in this investigation, right?
Absolutely. They have their testimony and they stand ready and willing to provide more testimony and more documents if needed.
And just to be clear, there's been no communication thus far, right?
I'm sorry, with whom?
With the special counsel.
Oh, no, absolutely not. No, the Gary and the case agent, they're both off the case. They were taken off the case last May. and they haven't had insight into what's going on currently. And I would be surprised if they were to be brought back at this point.
Got it. Great to have you on. Thank you so much. Thanks,
Sure,
Jason.
thanks.